Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular City Council meeting. Mayor Scott Dudley cannot be with us this evening. And we'll start the meeting with the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be given to us by Pastor Burleson of Living Faith Christian Center.
Thank you. Will you join with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you today for a great opportunity and a privilege that we have to be a part of this great community. We thank you for each council member who serves our city. We thank you for Mayor Dudley. We thank you for each one, Lord, who works together to make this city better for you. We thank you for tonight's agenda, that you would help us and give us wisdom, guidance that we need to make the right decisions. And may we always keep you first and foremost in our hearts. We just thank you for blessing the citizens of Oak Harbor and all those services that are daily meeting the needs of this community. We thank you for all that you have in store for this city. Greater is in store. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for the invocation, Pastor Burleson of Living Faith Christian Center. Now, please join me on the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. I can see all council members are present. The next item is the honors and recognitions. This is a proclamation for National Public Works Week, May 17 to 23, 2015. And the proclamation will be read to us by Council Member Joel Cervantes.
I was told it would be Mr. Stowell, and I had put together a PowerPoint. National Public Works Week, May 17th through the 23rd to 2015. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, storm drains, streets, public buildings, and solid waste collection. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent on the efforts and skill of public works officials. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff our Public Works Department is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. And where year's theme, Community Begins Here, speaks to the essential nature of public works services in support of everyday quality of life. Now therefore we, Scott Dudley Mayor, and the council members of the City of Oak Harbor do hereby proclaim May 17th through the 23rd, 2015 as National Public Works Week. Signed this 19th day of May, 2015, Scott Dudley Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Receiving the proclamation, our Public Works Director, Kathy Rawson. Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. Now for the approval of agenda. Oh, before that, we have a presentation. Every council meeting, we have a presentation from nonprofit organization and other organizations in the community. This evening, we have the Deception Pass Sail and Power Squadron, Jeff Campbell, former commander. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I am Jeff Campbell from Deception Pass Sail and Power Squadron, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our organization this evening. When you see this burgee on boats down in the marina, you'll know that the owner is a member of Deception Pass. Deception Pass is part of the United States Power Squadrons and one of more than 350 squadrons throughout the United States and Canada. The 100 members in our squadron are part of the 35,000 members nationwide dedicated to boating safety through education. Congratulations to the City of Oak Harbor as we celebrate our centennial this year. But as you can see, the United States Power Squadrons was founded in 1914, and we celebrated our centennial last year. Our focus is on education of our members and the boating public to promote boating safety. And we offer a variety of classes and programs to improve boaters' skill and confidence and enjoyment of their time on the water. Our mission involves the triad you see pictured here: education and community service, but also building camaraderie and friendships with other boaters. Our primary offering to the public is America's Boating Course, ABC, 12 hours of instruction on basic boating and boating safety. The course is recognized by the United States Coast Guard, and graduates of the course are eligible to receive their Washington State Boater Education Card. Pictured here, you see our commander, Dr. Monham, teaching the ABC course to employees at the Penn Cove Shellfish Farm, as well as recent ABC students getting some hands-on practice. For our members, we offer a series of advanced courses on boat handling and navigation, which increase in complexity from basic seamanship to celestial navigation, as well as a series of electives to enable members to develop a better understanding of their boat and the boating environment. Throughout the year, we also offer a variety of 2-hour seminars on boating-related topics which are free and open to the public. Deception Pass regularly participates in local parades to encourage boaters to wear their life jackets, and last year we patrolled the harbor and the marina during the hydroplane races to ensure the safety of the spectators and participants. You see participants practicing CPR and use of an automatic external defibrillator in one of our free seminars. This particular seminar was held at the Oak Harbor Yacht Club and taught by paramedic Rob Hall from Whidbey General. You also see Dr. Monham instructing a young boater on the proper fit and wear of a life jacket at the North Whidbey Fire and Rescue Open House. This week is National Safe Boating Week, sponsored annually by the National Safe Boating Council, and the message is wear your life jacket. In 2013, the most recent year for which statistics were available, there were 560 boating accident fatalities nationwide, and 17 of those were in the state of Washington. 77% of those fatalities were from drowning, and of those, 84% were not wearing their life jackets. Life jackets save lives, so please wear your life jacket while boating. If you would like to learn more about Deception Pass Sail and Power Squadron or our classes and programs, please visit our website at dpsps.org or contact our commander, Dr. Monham. Thank you again for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our organization. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Jeff Campbell. Any comment, question from the council? Hearing none. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think we have one from Ms. Heisen.
Thank you. If someone, I suppose they could go to the website. Is there a like a set meeting time and place if someone were interested in?
We normally meet the second Tuesday of each month at the Oak Harbor Yacht Club, and the meeting starts at 6 o'clock. But during the summertime, we're out on our boats, so we will begin again in September. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again. Next in our agenda is approval of the agenda. Our city administrator, Dr. Larry Court, is requesting to have a motion from the council to move item 12A before item 12, before item 10A. There's executive session before item 10A. Mr. Shabatis?
I move to have item 12A precede item 10A.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Servetus, seconded by Mr. Campbell, to move item 12A preceding item 10A. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Passed. Any other changes to the agenda, Bill? Mr. Severance?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Was moved by Mr. Severance, seconded by Mr. Servetus, to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. It passed. Thank you. And now, the next item is citizen comment period. The City Council has set aside 15 minutes of this meeting to provide you, the public, the opportunity to address the council on any city issues not already in the agenda. If you would like to make a comment on the consent agenda, you may do so. And please step up to the podium, state your full name, and please limit your comments to 15, I'm sorry. We got 15 minutes, but limit your comment to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Pro Tem Pagal. My name is Paul F. Brewer. I think a lot of you recognize me. I'm here tonight to talk about several different items. The first being the ball fields. Back in 1968, when Ray was mayor, and I was a young sailor at NAS Woodby Allen, the Knights of Columbus financed and built with Parkhurst and Lang the ball fields down there at City Beach. It was through the dedication of the Knights of Columbus that built those beautiful ball fields that we enjoy today. Some of the members at the time were Bert Latrundle and Jack Newman. I'd read the other names, but most of the people here, other than Jim Campbell, are too young to remember the names here, or got here later. But they constructed the ball fields and hoping they would stay there forever. But as I read the paper, I saw council members are thinking, well, let's move the ball fields. Well, I'm very much concerned that we want to straighten out the road down there and go take away City Beach park there, take away some of the park by putting a road. We're one of the few cities that have a beautiful beach and a park right on the beach, right next to the city where people can enjoy. We also want to remove the ball field, or not the ball fields, but the RV park for 3 years. Well, not only will we lose $80,000 a year, but all the money that's generated from the RVers that come down. They come from all over the country. We're the only one in the state of Washington that has an RV park. When you use the RV park for the spoils building a sewage treatment plant, you're going to have to pave it. You have to have a non-pervious surface. So that's going to even further ruin it. You can't just put the soil down there. And I think Rick Almberg probably knows from being in construction all those years, and other members know. But I beg you not to take and do away with the RV park and the ball fields. And the next item I'd like to talk about is tearing this building we acquired down. We keep on tearing buildings.
Excuse me, Mr. Brewer. Sorry to interrupt you, but the demolishment of the Woodby Island Bank is in our agenda, Bill.
Okay,
You
then
may speak in that
I'll wait
time.
till then. But once again, please, before you make any decision on the RV park, moving it and using it for spoils while building a sewage treatment plant, think it over. Look at the old Chevy dealership. They got a paved area that you could put the spoils at. You'd have to lease the property, of course, but do not take the RV park away. It was groups like the Knights of Columbus that built the parks. They built the RV park, they built the ball fields. Don't slap every old member in the face by removing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. We have two more from the audience who signed up for the public comment. Next is Mr. Hal Hovey.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. My name's Hal Hovey. In the past few months, we've heard a lot of people talk about the public input process that went on in preparation for the siting and planning for the wastewater treatment plant. Last week, I had the opportunity to attend one of these public input processes, and I'd like to just explain to you what I observed. I say observed because I wasn't allowed to participate, I was only allowed to observe. For the May 6th design charrette, the architectural design charrette, there were 12 members of the public that were handpicked and invited to make input on the design. Of those 12 handpicked people, only 6 showed up. And I'm sure the other 6 people were very busy, but there were 6 members of a city of 22,000 people who were making input on this design proposal. There were 8 other members of the public who were there, but we were only allowed to observe. We weren't allowed to make record or comments on the record. So of those, on any given subject that came up, and there were about 8 different topics that had to be voted on, there were no more than 4 people who were in agreement on any one issue. So essentially, there are 4 people in a city of 22,000 people who are making input on this design. I think that that is a flawed system. I would like to suggest to the council that for future venues where public input is requested or where it's required by law, that the process be modified so that any member of the public who has a comment be permitted to make that comment or input on the record. If there's too many people to be able to fit into a 2-hour meeting, then we should at least be able to do written comments that go into the published record for the input. I'd also like to mention that the design that came out of that meeting was a horrible, horrible design. It's all flat roofs and square buildings. I referred to it as resembling a medium security prison or a community college from the 1960s. And it doesn't include any of the design elements that came out of the first architectural design charrette, things like timber, steep metal roofs, stone, lots of deep window overhangs. It didn't have any of the northwest elements. It could be a building that is anywhere in the United States, Europe, Canada. It looks like, you know, a middle school or an elementary school. Architects really need to go back to the drawing board on that one. The other issue I'd like to address is the what I keep hearing talked about as a master plan for Windjammer Park. It's been brought up several times in the last few months, meetings I've been in, and I don't know what the public input is going to be on that process, but I would like to volunteer to be part of that public input. So if you're going to hand-pick people to sit in on that, please consider me to be a volunteer. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hovey. The next person on the list who would like to address the council is Mr. Bob Brown.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Bob Brown. For years, I have conducted business along Pioneer Way there, both in the vehicle and walking, and had a great view of our windmill, of trees, our shoreline out there. A wonderful place to be. The RV park gets its fair share of visitors. Every so often, during the off-season, we still have vehicles coming in there and using that place. I'm sure that there must be a day in which no vehicles are there, but every time that I have passed the area, that RV park does have a visitor. Sometimes it is packed. Today, there was 15 vehicles I saw parked in there. The grounds of the park are well kept by our park department and are well used by the citizens and the out-of-town visitors. Most every day, my dog takes me for a walk through the park, and we see many others doing the same thing. The park benches provide an excellent spot to just sit down and relax and enjoy yourself. Take in a great view and enjoy what many other cities would love to have. The picnic tables get great use as families and organizations are given a chance to relax and have a social time together away from home and work. With the odor from the proposed treatment plant, will it destroy that park? That could destroy a very nice meal. At a previous council meeting, a number of people voiced objections to the plant going in the proposed area down there. Following those objections, I believe it was Mr. Skinner who stated the plan had already approved, so stick with it. Well, as we all know, when a jury finds a defendant guilty, that is not necessarily the end of the case. Most cases, an appeal is filed and it goes up through the channels for review and more review. And in time, some judge will find that there was a punctuation mark misplaced in the charging papers, and therefore it was sent back to ground zero. Start all over. Well, I do believe it is now time to start all over on a review of the treatment plant.
Excuse me, Mr. Brown.
If I am to believe that the local newspapers, the initial agreed price was $80 million.
Excuse me, Mr. Brown, your 3 minutes is up. However, I'll give you 30 seconds to complete your comments.
That price has jumped 45% to $116 million per the same newspaper. I believe that it's time to give a more serious review and not turn this park into the same thing that Seattle is faced with the Big Bertha drilling down there. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anyone else who would like to address the council? We have, okay, go ahead, followed by Ms.
Did you want to talk? Hi, I'm Tom Tveit. I bring to you tonight your ordinance that you passed last time on 1728, the amendment, and I'd ask you to reconsider that. In reading the details of the amendment, I noticed that it includes specifically the water treatment, sewage, and roads, and that you basically would have the right, without bringing it to the public for a vote, without bringing it to the public for any further consideration, all you have to do is deem it to be needed, which could be needed to pay for the sewage treatment plant. So now I've got a need, so forget any questions about it. And what it reads is that you're able to give away developed or trade or sell developed parkland. Now this smacks of the ballparks, the whole thing with Bayshore being extended, the RV park, all of that stuff that is already developed and looks very nice and is used a lot. I would say that that's what it really looks like. I understand that there was a specific piece of property that you initially were discussing at the time of this, and I would ask that this be a temporary code so that you're able to deal with that one piece of property, but not make it a blanket that can be used now and 3 years from now, whenever, and it can include things like the ballpark without further discussion or vote by the people. I think that's something that is important, as roadways should have a vote of the people. And I don't think that there is any emergent roadway change that shouldn't go before the public with a vote, not just input, but an absolute vote. Nothing is that vital or emergent. We're not putting a hospital road there. So I think that any place in this town that needs a roadway change should go before the public on a vote, because there isn't anything that needs to be so vital, so quick, that you should use this ordinance. So I'd ask that this ordinance be changed to be temporary and to eliminate the roadway piece.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. I'd like to begin by complimenting the City Council on the fact that they submitted some very good questions to the staff and that they were beginning.
Excuse me, pardon me. Could you state your full name?
I'm sorry, I'm Frangie Christian.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I forgot that not everyone knows. I'm sorry. And as I was saying, I was very pleased to see that there is some very serious thought being given to this siting of the waste treatment plant, and also that I don't want to get too far into the fact whether you're going to, what you're going to do with the bank property. I would ask one question, though, please, about after or before you make the decision, that you look at the layout that was presented in some papers at this afternoon's meeting and see that there might be some good use of the land before the project is completed, and use that as a factor in your voting. That's all I'm asking, is that you take a look. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. At this time, let me close the public meeting. Public meeting is closed. We proceed to the next agenda, which is the consent agenda. What's the council wishes on the consent agenda? Mr. Albert.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Was moved by Mr. Armberg and seconded by Mr. Campbell to approve the consent agenda as presented. And further discussion? Hearing none, those, Mr. Armberg?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
And for me, I was absent during the May 5 meeting, so I probably should have pulled that to have that as a separate item. We have a second here, so this belongs to the council. And I will not be voting, I'll be voting on the consent agenda, but I won't be
Right.
voting on the minutes.
You're talking about the letter A, 6A, minutes of the
6A.
regular
That
council
is
meeting.
correct, yes.
You may vote on that. Doesn't mean that your yes vote will be approving the contents of the agenda. Merely, if you have any correction on the agenda, then you can vote.
Thank you,
no.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Any further discussion? Mr. Servetis?
I was just going to suggest, I know Mr. Taggart's in the audience too, it's just also a vote of confidence. It's not necessarily in the actual accuracy of the minutes, but the staff that prepared them, that you're agreeing with it, I don't think.
Thank you.
Good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion passed. Proceed to item number 7. This is the staff, mayor, and council comments. We'll start with the city administrator, and he has a wastewater treatment plant staff update. And coming to the podium is city engineer, Mr. Joe Stowell.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, I don't have PowerPoints tonight, can you believe it? So if I seem a little bit lost, that's part of it. But in addition to the update that was emailed out to everybody, I didn't figure I'd rehash all of that. Some key things that happened over the last 2 weeks, obviously we had the Charrette. We sent out kind of a recap of that to the council members. That came from the facilitator. A copy of the presentation that was given and the poster boards are available on the website, oakharborcleanwater.org. Moving on to the outfall project, that's really what's taken a lot of our time right now. That's moving forward. last week we met with the entire construction team, KBA, Carollo, and Hoffman, to kind of get everybody's up to speed on when we were going to be starting and what the different roles we'd be doing would be, solidify all that. That was followed by a pre-construction meeting with RPM, which is the subcontractor for Hoffman. And that's kind of the big deal today, is getting started on construction. You'll start seeing some activity down there beginning of June. Maybe they'll start right after the holiday. They'll start moving into the bank building, setting up shop. They're going to be fencing off a small area down there by the waterfront and another area off to the side of the wastewater treatment plant to use for material storage. Another thing, another good meeting we had last week was with Enviro Issues to discuss the public outreach that we'll have throughout the duration of the outfall project, with some forethought into what we might do through the rest of the project. So we're looking at things like utility stuffers, door hangers, maybe a small ad in the newspaper to let the community know, signs down in the park to let them know what's coming. We're going to have to be working pretty quick. We just approved their contract last agenda, so they're hustling to help us get that put together. And with that, everything else is pretty much no different than the last time I gave an update, so I won't dwell on the previous things I've talked about.
Thank you, Mr. Stovall. Any comments, questions from the council? Mr. Umber?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Stowell, I've gone back and reviewed some of the original schedules that we have, and I'm going to refer specifically to the December 30th, 2014 schedule. And we have an estimate, the 60% estimate was projected to be provided in June. And the printout that we got here from you on an update shows that the 60% estimate will not be presented until approximately September. Can you explain why we're going to have a 2 to 3 month delay on the 60%? What are the factors that have pushed us into that position?
In short form, if I can answer this as concisely as I can, is we spent some time working on the cost estimate and reconciling that, and value engineering to look at ways to bring the cost down, and that took a little bit extra time.
Okay, then on April the 7th, we had a presentation, and among other things was the finance, but there's also key council decisions. And what was presented was, among other things, is the bond sales are projected to be committed in June. We are approaching June. Where are we realistically with that without having the 60% estimate?
That I'm not qualified to answer. I'm going to have to look for some help on that one.
He's not here. And Doug is not here. Well, here's one of the concerns that I have is when I look back at these schedules, the critical path moments, the pinnacle moments of this schedule keep sliding away. And we're about 6 months behind where we were when we started putting down real numbers for our design and timelines. And just simply inflation right now, according to Hoffman, is about $150,000 a month. 6 months represents $900,000. That's $900,000 that's not going to go directly into the facility. It's opportunity time that is going by. What does the staff need from the council and the mayor to, number one, assure that we don't keep sliding away on this schedule, and how can we accelerate it?
I'm going to ask Larry to answer that one.
Well, that's obvious. It's a great question, and it's a complicated one as well. There are probably some things that we can respond to in a kind of an expedient way, but you know, if we have we can put together a timeline based on what we know now. The information that you provided earlier from 5 months ago, it's changed things, and for different reasons. There's a way to bring that information forward for what are those critical paths that we need to follow? At what point do we provide that, get that information out and get it prepared in an expedient way to move forward? We can provide that information, but we don't have that available right now. I mean, if you have a specific question, maybe we can address that.
Well, my specific question is related to the schedule.
Okay.
When we're talking about $900,000 in real money, that translates into rates for the ratepayers.
Right.
There's no way to reverse that because it's
Right.
already spent. So I would appreciate it if staff would convey to the mayor, because we understand that you work for the mayor. You don't do anything without the mayor's direction. Please convey to the mayor, at least this council member is concerned about this schedule as it relates to our sewer rates. We don't have an extra $1 million to diddle away on and I'm not saying you're diddling time away, but we don't have an extra $1 million. And we don't have another $1 million. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnberg. Any further questions, comments? Mr. Chabritis?
Well, I was going to ask this, and I just remembered Mr. Merriman's not here. I don't know if you'll know the answer, Mr. Stowell. In your funding update, you outline the SRF funds, the grants that we've received. Do you know what we've escrowed so far? Our goal by the end of the 5-year rate study that we approved via ordinance was $15 million. Do you know how far along that path we are?
If I'd be trying to channel Doug here, but I'm guessing it's in the 8 million, but I really don't know for sure without.
Okay.
having
And that
him
number
tell you
somewhere in
that.
my brain sticks out. But I was just looking for an update. Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chabritis. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none? No. Thank you, Mr. Joe Stowell, for the presentation. Then we'll go back to Dr. Court.
I just have
For
one
your
thing to say, and
comments.
that's, it's very pleasing to know that that the city of Oak Harbor as a city is now a little over 100 years old. That happened, that started last week, and we had a great turnout at the fire department. A lot of folks came out and not only met our fire crew, but a lot of other folks from our staffing community and a lot of people who really got excited about coming there and meeting folks and having a couple of nice things to eat and have a beverage and want to thank our staff who participated in that and we've got other plans throughout the year that will go beyond the fire department and we're pretty excited. So. We're off and running on our next 100 years.
Thank you, Dr. Court. And now we move to comments from council members. We'll start with Mrs. Munns. If you can, that quiet. You still don't have your voice. Hope you feel better. Next one is Mr. Severance on economic development.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll have we meet for lunch every 2 months, and our next meeting is tomorrow in Freeland, so I'll go to that and report back. But I wanted to read a couple things from the EDC. They have begun a 6-month process to develop a economic development strategy plan. They're looking for input And I know that I believe we are somewhere in the process of hiring an economic development person in our city, so hopefully we can get that rolling before long and put them together with the EDC. They have a couple of workshops coming up, one on May 28th at the library, 12:30 p.m. until 2 p.m., How to Get Hired on the Base workshop. That's being brought back by popular demand. It says that NAS Whidbey has over 2,400 civilian jobs which pay competitive wages and often offer medical, retirement, and vacation benefits. So they'll have a human resource specialist there, and they have the workshop May 28th, 12:30 to 2 o'clock, Oak Harbor Library. And then they've got at the Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce on the 27th, the EDC is sponsoring a workshop on how to finance your business. So that's from 11 until 1 o'clock on May 27th at the Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce. So I'll report back, like I say, on the meeting and what we discuss at our next council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Severance. Next one is Mr. Campbell on lodging tax.
Well, we only deal with lodging tax once a year, and that's been a long time ago. I don't know what kind of money we've gotten on taxes so far this year. Haven't heard from Mr. Merriman, to tell you the truth. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Next one, Mr. Almberg on Island Transit.
Well, Island Transit was existing while I was rafting down the Colorado River at the base of the Grand Canyon, so I really don't have anything to report. And I can say one thing, that my experience proved that our great Grand Canyon is America's cathedral without a roof on it. It is a very special place, and thank you to Teddy Roosevelt and some of those who went 100 years before us who said, keep it the way it is. We can only mar it. We can't improve it. Thanks.
Welcome back from your wonderful vacation. Visit America. Next one, Mr. Servatius.
Thank you. Several things. You know, I heard two references tonight about what I read in the Whidbey News-Times, so no offense to Jesse Stensland or any of the rest of the folks there, but please contact us. Mr. Brewer, I appreciate your comments. Also, being a member of the Knights of Columbus myself, I appreciate that piece of history. I just attended the middle school district finals here about an hour and a half ago and watched my son run, and it was absolutely amazing to sit in that stadium and just appreciate what a beautiful facility it is. We had jets flying overhead, and I'm fairly biased being pro-Navy, but it actually added to the event. People from out of town, they were kind of mesmerized by them, and they were loud, but they were mesmerized. So the reason I point that out is my intent, and I speak fairly strongly on improving and relocating those ball fields someday, because I remember when we looked in 2006, building that new Memorial Stadium, how many people said, you know, this was built by veterans, and we don't want to in any way disrespect those folks, but to go to Memorial Field, the old Memorial Field right now, and stand there and imagine practicing, playing, and actually winning a state championship there, and to go over to the new facilities, I find the new facilities magical, and obviously those come at a cost, but when you look at all the folks that were there today eating fast food, buying concessions, buying sweatshirts, and that we can attract those venues that we could not attract before when we didn't have the facility. So as we look at making some of those decisions, my goal, and if the Knights are willing, I would recruit them again to come help us, but let's work on improving that, and expanding the park into that area is one of the goals I still want to work on. It's not in any way to take away from those that came before us in, I think you said 1960. It's to make all of that park available year-round for everyone, and then have an upgraded facility where you can attract Babe Ruth and or even high school or men's softball, women's softball tournaments. I also heard a number thrown out today that I heard last month of $116 million. I don't know that I've ever seen that number. So I want to be careful. We know that this is costing more, but the mission creeps sometimes with a sentence that then gets repeated. I don't know. The Whidbey News-Times did print 116, but I've heard that now I think 4 or 5 times, and it's starting to intrigue me. I want to go find out where that started. Signage. Ms. Munns passed me a note, and tell me if I'm reading this correctly. Please, Mr. Stowell, as we move down, or you have construction offices set up, will there be a location, you don't have to necessarily answer this, I'll just make the suggestion, that allows the public to come in as we did in Pioneer Way, to have a place to get input, or give input and or get information on that project? And I think we'll continue to ask staff and the mayor to give more regular updates so that the public is getting information, not just from the Whidbey News Times. So no, unless you want to field that, but I think you plan on having some form of office for public relations or something?
At a minimum, it's a public facility, so the community's welcome. We're going to set up special times. I don't know that we have the exact date and time set just yet for the community to come in and talk with the contractor and staff about the project. And we'll have displays available around around where the project's occurring so they can see more about what's going on.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Severns made some comments regarding the EDC. I was in a conversation with Christine Cribb, who's the executive director for the Chamber of Commerce, and she rattled off a list the other day of jobs, predominantly on base and in the school district, that are available. And I was fairly impressed. Now, some of those are part-time, they're not full-time, or they're seasonal, but it was a rather impressive list. So I'd implore folks, if you're looking or know someone that's seeking employment, to contact the chamber and see if there's a fit there, because it was a fairly lengthy list of positions that they're trying to fill. And last but not least, I would like to extend my sincere thanks, they're hiding out in the hallway, a couple of them, to the Oak Harbor Fire Department, North Whidbey Fire Department, and the base. They did a burn a week ago that I was able to participate in, and it's truly one of the most memorable events of my life. It was absolutely unbelievable to see what those men and women do, to sit in a room. Probably the final burn was a room about the third of this size. They had blazes going in both corners. The ceiling, it's rolling up the walls, across the ceiling, and I was given a thermal gun that at one point the fire was averaging 350 to 650 degrees, but where it was focused on the ceiling, at one point read 1100 degrees. And Captain Van Giesen's in there in a recliner, feet away from this thing, and they're hooting and hollering like it's a Seahawks game. I know Mr. Anderson's hiding out in the hall there, but he was equally as having a great time, and for them to be that comfortable in that environment was amazing. So I appreciate more than ever what they do. It was an incredible experience, and I'm grateful to have been able to participate in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Servetus. Ms. Heisen?
Thank you. I had written the same note down as Councilmember Servatius regarding the comments about, I read this in the Whidbey News Times, and I was going to say the same thing. Please, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. If you see something in the paper that seems, I don't know, questionable or alarmist or concerning or curious, just anything, pay attention if it says we may do something, the city might do something. Those are going to be your operative words there, because I read may and might all the time, and I'm thinking we're not going to do that. And so, again, if you have any questions at all, you can reach us anytime. If you email council@oakharbor.org, it'll come to every single one of us. So very easy way to reach all of us at the same time. And we and staff are always happy to answer your questions. Also, I want to thank Mr. Hovey for his comments during public comment. I 100% agree on all counts. So thank you. And last week and today and tomorrow, I have been and will be attending a FEMA class on incident command systems and emergency preparations. And I know that we've done a workshop here about, emergency preparation and the role of elected officials, in case of some kind of catastrophic event. The scenario that we keep focusing on in class is the earthquake. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. And if anybody looks at a map of fault lines, it's absolutely terrifying. And experts agree that it's not if, it's when. So I strongly encourage people to, work with their families, develop an emergency plan, start stockpiling what you can, make a safe meeting place, talk to your neighbors, because again, it's only a matter of time. Might not be in our lifetimes, which would be fantastic, but it will happen. And we are isolated and we have limited resources, and that could be a very bad situation. So please work with your families and think about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Heisen. And now proceed to our next agenda on the agenda bill. And this resolution 15-15. This is the Mangat annexation petition. I think at the podium is Mr. Kamak.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. I'm going to step away and see if I can get a control for the presentation. So this is a public meeting, and it's regarding the Mangat annexation. And I'll go through a few slides and provide some background on this, on the annexation, and also the review process that the city has gone through in order to present this information. Back in 2014, June 23rd, the Mangats submitted an annexation petition, and the petition is basically a request for the city to consider annexation. So the City Council held a public meeting on that request. The annexation proposal is for 3 properties totaling about 19 acres. I'll have a location map here that we can bounce through real quick. So this is the city boundary. This is Goldie Road. This is Oak Harbor Road, Gun Club Road. City limits on both sides of the property. There's 3 properties in here that the Mangats own. So on June 23rd, or on August 6th, the City Council held a public meeting to consider whether this annexation should move forward and whether further review needs to be done. And they did so. City Council said, okay, let's consider this annexation. Let's look at it a little closer. But in that process, City Council also geographically modified the area to include a small central property, which is right here in the middle. So the Mangats own properties, which is about kind of a reverse C-shaped, and City Council included that property in to consider that entire area for annexation. So the decision on August 6th does not obligate the city to annex the property. It just merely allows the annexation to move forward and further review be done. So during this review, one of the main things that you're trying to determine is whether it is in the best interest and general welfare of the city, not the property owner. Is it the welfare of the city would be served by the annexation of this unincorporated territory? So how do we do that? We review it against the annexation policies that's in our city's comprehensive plan. So again, this is just showing the area. This is the future land use map. The city boundaries are in black line, and you have most of the properties in the UGA with designated land uses, and the Mangat properties are right in here, along with the included property. The dotted line indicates that area. So we'll quickly go through the different goals and policies. In summary, there's a lot of information here. It's a challenging property to serve with our infrastructure and with our services, but I'll try and categorize those as we go through the goals that are in our comprehensive plan. So this is the goal in the urban growth area element that has all our policies. And so policy regarding, we'll go quickly one by one. I know I've written a brief description in the report, but for people sitting at home watching this, it may help to provide some information on this. So land to be annexed should include only areas seen as logical extensions of the city located adjacent to the existing urban development. So if you look at, and I'll go back and forth between the some of the maps and the goals. So the Mangat properties are contiguous to the city through the north and through the east, but along the west, along Oak Harbor Road, you can see that there's a small area of county and city. So this causes a disjointed break in the city boundaries when you're driving along Oak Harbor Road. This may not seem as much, but this does cause issues for our fire and police response and any issues that come out of any investigation. How do we know this? We already have areas like this in the city where we have challenges. We have areas that are totally enclosed where you go through city, county, city, and the city and the county has had issues in that area, and that's why when we review these annexations and involve the departments, they provide that information based on current experience. Policy 4B, the city should avoid annexations that would result in unincorporated enclaves within the UGA. So this property by annexation is not going to create an enclave, but it is just one property short of creating an enclave that would encompass the 7th Avenue wetlands. So they're not causing that issue right now, but they are pushing the next property owner that wants to annex in this area to have to deal with enclosing all of the 7th Avenue wetlands and the properties in there. It'll be boxed in, and you'll have an area of county completely surrounded by the city. Annexations to the city should be based on evidence that public facilities and service capacities already exist or are planned for and can be efficiently, economically, and practically provided by either public or private sources. So this is the major issue for this annexation, is that public infrastructure does not exist already, and it's not planned for. And the solution to try and serve is probably not efficient or economical or practical. So I'll go through that a little bit here. So this is the subject property in relation to where the existing sewer system, and water can be provided. There's a water line along Oak Harbor Road. So water is not a problem for this property, but sanitary sewer is. So the closest sewer lines are on Goldie Road and another one on Oak Harbor Road in the city limits over here. So this exhibit is a snapshot of what's in the sewer comp plan. And this is the solution that is in our sewer comprehensive plan as service for this area. The Mangets property is right over here, and you can see a little arrow that indicates that a lift station is needed. So basically, how a sewer system would work for this area is there's a sewer line that comes all down here and comes into this lift station. And then this lift station will pump it out onto the Goldie Road. And then the plan is to have either, I think this lift station may be already existing or needs to be built or upgraded, and there would be another trunk line that connects that to this one and eventually into the gravity sewer. So the Mangat property is kind of at the very low end of this, what can be considered as a first phase. And in order for them to be able to develop their property, they would have to build the system, and we will only accept it if it's built to our standards and can serve a larger area. So we don't think that that's an efficient way for them to build this large of a system. We have some planning level estimates on what the cost is, and it doesn't seem that it would be efficient for the development that they have on their property. So back to the goal or the policy is to evidence that public facilities and service capacities already exist or are planned for, and neither are the case for this annexation. Annexation should not diminish the present level of service or create an excessive financial burden to existing and prospective property owners in the city. Again, this goes back to the fire and police. The existing development on the Mangat properties are not up to city code. There's several things that need to be done to improve for fire access and fire hydrants to improve the fire flow here. There are some building code requirements that are necessary for all properties annexed into the city to build pads and skirts and landscaping. Roads need to be improved, fiber turnarounds need to be provided. So all of these are non-existent at this time. So without all of these, it does become a burden for us to provide services to this property. Ensure property owners within an annexation area are aware of the foreseeable obligations or requirements that may be imposed upon them by the city at the time of annexation. So the Mangits have been made aware of all the improvements that need to be done, but we don't have any evidence that it can be done in a timely fashion. Some of these requirements, our code requirements, require to be done within 2 or 3 years of annexation. And if you look at the costs of some of these improvements, to be done within a short period of time seems to be impractical, and of course we fear that they won't get done, and then all these properties do become a burden because they're not up to the standard for our fire, police, or any other service that we offer. Require existing buildings within annexed areas to meet the city's fire and safety requirements. And I think I've stated this through all the other policies. I think there are a couple policies in here specifically related to fire rating and police services. And both departments have indicated that with every annexation, they are burdened with extra effort to maintain service. But in this area, since you're bringing, it would be development that's not up to code, and there are people living here, which increases the chance that services need to be delivered here more often than you would if you were annexing an industrial property or a commercial property. Annexation proposal should describe the method and level of funding for capital facilities needed to serve the annexed area. As I mentioned before, we have some planning level estimates, but none of these estimates are in our capital improvements plan currently. So therefore, for the next 6 years, there's no plans to spend any money in this area to provide sewer services or any other services. Proponents of the annexation in developed or partially developed areas should pay their fair share of costs of urban services and public improvements required to meet the city's level of service standards. So other than this, the sewer system that needs to be upgraded or provided for this region, there are public improvements that need to be done on the property to bring the streets that they have up to code, urban services. So if you are in the city, you need to have urban services and urban level improvements. So not only are the streets needing to be improved within the development, but also streets adjacent to this development would need to be improved. If any other city were to develop their property, they would be required to do half-street improvements or improvements along the street sides. So similar requirements would be in place for them as well. And again, that can get challenging with annexation because unless you have a development permit that's coming in, some of these improvements won't be triggered. I mean, you can have an annexation agreement or an annexation with conditions, but it's really hard to enforce once you get past that time. The city may require the preparation of a fiscal impact study which addresses long and short-term economic impacts to the city. The city did not require a study be done here, but as I've mentioned, the costs and the challenges of providing services to this area are pretty obvious and evident. So it seems like it's going to take a lot of resources to provide services to this area that may not balance out. Annex when possible areas of sufficient size that square off city boundaries and enhance circulation. Here, the properties will be squared off. That's not the problem at all. But will it really enhance circulation? Really, the squaring off doesn't add or enhance the circulation. Gun Club Road, there's right-of-way to the north of this property. That's for Gun Club Road. That would have to be increased and extended further to Goldie Road in order to enhance the circulation in this area, but none of that can be done really with just annexation alone. Proposed annexations shall not result in the long-term reduction of the established level of service standards, and I think I've pointed out that we do find it challenging to keep the service levels high without these properties going through some substantial improvements and code compliance. So, in review of the goals and policies regarding this annexation, it indicates that the Mangat annexation request is currently not in the best interest of the city and its citizens. So based on this review, it is recommended that the city council not continue this annexation process. So what staff is recommending is to adopt the resolution that's included in your packet and to stop the review of this requested annexation of the Mangat properties. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Kamek. Before I go to the City Council for questions and comments, I'm going to open the floor for public meeting. Mr. Kamek, is the proponent or representative of the proponents present here tonight?
I am not aware they are.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for public meeting. You may address the council. Please state your full name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Once again, Paul Brewer, City of Oak Harbor. This annexation's been going on for years and years. If the council decides to move forward between Goldie Road and Old Oak Harbor Road, the gun club extension, they just put the water line going there to the new water facility that you have. If you proceed, we need to ensure that the Mangan properties are willing to help design or not design, but build that road through finances. Because you're gonna need a decent road to get down there for firefighting and for access. Because once it's annexed, I'm sure the property will be developed in a few years from now as a residential and not as a mobile home park as it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Anyone else? Second call? Third call, public meeting is closed. And the council has questions, comments to Mr. Kamek. Start with Mr. Chabrites.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. How many units are in that 19-ish acres, Mr. Kamak? Do you know?
Don't know offhand. Okay, there are a total of 57 units.
Okay. It seems like the Mangat's primary concern is sanitary sewer. Obviously, though, they would want water as well, but that, as you pointed out, is not the concern. My concern, reading these letters, and I did drive through there at one point with Chief Merrill, if we have 57 aging septic systems, that currently is the county's problem, but it borders our wetlands, or is the 7th Avenue, you showed a picture up there, those 7th Avenue wetlands? That was not city, but it still borders us. Do we possibly inherit some of those problems of 57 failed septics down the road?
Well, we hope not to. In conversations with the county and their staff, they seem to indicate that there is some options to extend the life of their existing sewer system on their property. It's just going to require some creativity and some financing to get it done on their property. So we believe that there'll be options for them to extend their existing sewer system at least to a point where the timing may be better, you know, for annexation, maybe related to other property or other development in the area.
Okay.
But that's the hope.
And that was my thought too, is when the timing is better. The number that you list in here for the sewer extensions, I'm going to round, but it's approximately 4.5 million between the lift station and the extension. Is that a cost that normally the developer would bear?
Yes.
And what, being newer to this job, what assurances do we have then? Do they have to escrow that money so we know that they can do it, or they have to do it beforehand is the most favorable way before we would approve an annexation?
Financing for public projects, I'm really not sure what the mechanism that we would use to make sure that they have the finances in place to do it.
Okay.
I'd have to defer it to somebody else.
Okay, it was just a question of thought. I mean, I will support staff's recommendation on this, having once again, you did a great job. What the public's not seeing, but they could if they download the packet, is your details on each one of those bullet points, and once again, having driven through there with Chief Merrill and looked at the actual streets, there's some definite concerns as far as access and providing service in there for fire at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. Mrs. Munns?
One of the questions she had was the Mangits referenced the Town and Country Mobile Home Park that had previously connected.
Their letter did?
Yeah, it says Town and Country had similar sewage issues. This is Island County Public Health in a hard copy of a packet.
Oh.
It says Town and Country Mobile Home Park located at 730 North Oak Harbor had similar sewage system issues to Valley High that were ultimately resolved when they connected to the city of Oak Harbor. So Ms. Munn's question is Town and Country, when did they connect? And once again, this is a letter
Mr.
from
Powers
Jim
knows more information than I do.
To the best of my knowledge, that connection took place well after they were already in the city limits. So it wasn't a question of annexation and then connection to the sewer. It was a question of the failing septic system and then the need to connect to the city sewer, but they were already in the city limits.
Okay, and so that may answer the next two. Thank you.
You good? Thank you, Mrs. Munns, relayed by Mr. Cervantes. Now, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. It's this impression on my part that if the Mangits did all the work they had to do on their property, they're going to have to deal with the county to do that today. If we didn't extend out, they would just be out what they did, right? If we don't extend out, because one of the objections was you're going to build an enclave in the middle of this if we, so they could be out an awful lot of money if we decided not to go out that direction.
I'm still not, I apologize, but I'm not following your question.
Well, it seemed to me when you were talking, there was a whole bunch of stuff that they had to do to their property.
Yes.
Okay, if they go do that, and then we decide to not extend the city out there, they're just out the money. There's no guarantee that they would get annexed the next time.
It would make it more favorable for us to annex
Yeah.
it, but with any annexation, there's no guarantee. It's
Yeah.
completely the choice of the city council to determine whether
Right.
it's in the best interest. So, yes, there's no guarantee, but it does make it more favorable.
And to do all that, they're going to have to deal with the county. They won't be dealing with us to do all the work that would be required on that property.
The permits and the reviews, they're in the county jurisdiction,
Okay.
so therefore, that's their venue, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't catch it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Armbruster?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to support the adoption of Resolution 1515. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Armbruster. Mr. Severance?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will also be supporting this.
Thank you, Mr. Severance. Ms. Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have been reviewing the correspondence, and you sent a letter with all of the bullet points, and then they, looks like, had a couple of responses. And I'm wondering if you can touch on some of their concern. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but I've got a copy.
I don't have it, but I kind of remember some of their points. Was there any particular one that you wanted, or you want me to address all of them? If you can. Ethan, yeah.
They appear to have been under the impression that this would happen, and so.
I can address that.
Yeah, they seem a little believe what we were supposed to do. I don't want to say misled, but.
Well, I think things are viewed differently when applications are made to the city. So when somebody from outside the cities city limits want to annex into the city, we as staff always explain the process by which they can annex into the city. So we give them all the information, we give them the application, we tell them what it takes, and sometimes just giving them that information can be construed as providing support for that annexation. And I think there's probably some misunderstanding there, because I don't think we as staff overstep our authority or information to try and tell somebody that, you know, if you do this, this, and this, especially for things that are not requirements. You know, annexation is completely up to the city to determine whether you want to annex or not. This is not, if you meet steps 1, 2, 3, you automatically get in. So staff is very reluctant when we convey messages to the public that this is the process and these are the things that would be required, but eventually it is the city council that makes that decision. So that may have been misconstrued, I think, from their part.
And that makes sense. The, where is it? There's, yeah, the concern about the potential for drain field failures and limited options for conforming repairs, inadequate area being one of them. Is that just going to be theirs and the county's problem, or?
We didn't want to, and like I said, I did contact county staff and ask them, you know, are there really any options that they have on their property?
Mhm.
And the answer was yes, they do have options to
Okay.
extend the system. So
Okay.
I can understand the applicant's need and urgency to try and get the system in place, but they do have some options that maybe they can explore further. That's the information I got from a conversation with the county staff.
Okay, perfect. And another one of them was Mr. Servadius's, which you've already addressed. So I too agree with staff's recommendation that this doesn't appear to be feasible on a number of levels. So I would move to approve resolution number 15-15.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Hyson, seconded by Mr. Servatius, to adopt Resolution 15-15, rejecting the proposed annexation of the Mangat properties. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passed. At this time, we'll take a 5-minute break before we go to executive session. After the break, we can go to executive session. Would that be all right? Just 5 minutes break.
Yeah.
Then we'll come back.
So we're going to
Thank you.
take a break, come back, and then go ahead.
I think it's 5 minutes already.
I didn't know if they'd come back in there and hanging out.
Where's the camera? Oh, it's there.
Thank you so much. I will check that out.
Welcome back, everyone. Reconvene the regular council meeting. And at this time, the city council will go on executive session, scheduled minutes. If we need more time, I'll come out and make announcement for extension of time. We're back on our regular city council meeting. We have concluded an executive session concerning property acquisition. No decision was made by the council during the executive session. Now we continue with the next agenda. This is under 10A, Resolution 15-14, wastewater treatment plant, use of property underlying the Whidbey Island Bank building after construction. At the podium, our city engineer, Mr. Joe Stowell.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, I wasn't kidding earlier when I said I don't have PowerPoint, so I'm just kind of winging this one through. We've talked about it quite a bit, so I'll be brief. This is regarding Resolution 1514, which is a use of property underlying the Whidbey Island Bank building after construction. We first talked about this at an April 22nd workshop, and then I brought it forward for City Council on May 5th. And at that time, it was deferred to the next meeting, and that's this meeting. I don't have any additional information than what's already been presented. Be willing to, we had the workshop earlier today. That probably should have answered most of the questions. So if you have any additional that you've thought of since then, or any other comments, I'm available.
Thank you, Mr. Stowell. Before I go to the council, I would like to open a public meeting. And if you'd like to address the council, please step up to the podium, state your full name, and please limit your comment to 3 minutes. The
Hi.
public comment period is now open.
Thank you. Skip Attila, 1090 Southeast Hathaway. First off, I missed the opportunity beforehand, but I just want to mention the Kraken dedication will take place on June 11th at 3:30 down by the Kraken. That's just a sidelight, not associated with this. My comment for regarding the building is looking at or hearing what's going on. The estimates for retrofit of the building are anywhere from $500,000 to $5 million. If history is going to repeat itself, it's probably going to be close to the $5 million in order to make it usable. My thought on that is we're at the point where we could go ahead and, rather than wait till the project's over, raise the building now, do a little bit of redesign, move some of the facilities up into that, make a nice-looking building from Pioneer Way. Don't use that slot for parking. That's not where parking's needed. It's needed more on the park side of the facility. But at the first charrette, they had a more in-line type of design for the building that narrowed it. Go ahead and shift back to something like that. Move some of those facilities up into the footprint. Since you're raising the building for the project, that can be part of the project. We don't have to come up with additional funding to retrofit it. And that way you can move the whole project up a little bit, condense a little bit, and not make it quite as big of a high school campus with the flat roofs. That's just kind of what I was thinking regarding the building. If you're going to make the decision to raise it, do it sooner as opposed to later, and shift some of the facilities for this wastewater treatment plant up into that footprint. And that way, like I said, you can shift the whole thing further north, make it a little smaller, and a more pleasing facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Potilla. Anyone else?
Paul Brewer, Oak Harbor. You know, after reviewing everything, originally I was against tearing the building down, but it only makes sense to put parking on the other side, as Skip had just stated. We're going to need more parking once this facility is built, but it looks like a prison. I'm just looking for the gun towers and all that. It's really a terrible design, and if the designer's here, I hope he hears me loud and clear. If you're going to build something and we're going to spend that kind of money, let's build something that's pleasing to the eye, that the city can be proud of, not another prison or school campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Anyone else?
Tom Tveit. I'd like to, I attended the workshop prior to this meeting, and it was helpful in understanding a idea design that's out there. What I would say is that after listening to the meeting, the workshop, it is clear that we should tear down the building. It is too much to, and I believe one of the folks mentioned that it was kind of a push in cost in terms of retrofitting and trying to use it and taking it out. I think that if we take it out now, not wait until after construction of the sewer treatment plant, some of these edge buildings that are not part of the way the water flows, so I'm not talking about the central building that's got to have the 20-foot hole, but some of these other buildings, especially like the training center and those kinds of things, if that can be built in that narrow corridor with a couple, 3 stories matching the building, the bank building next door, you could use the second floor, building part of that on the ground floor. You could use the second floor for parking, as it's done in Seattle and other places in the way that they build the building. It would cost adjust to the design, but then you could use the third floor and put your training center, and that would have the view of the harbor. It would have the view of the park. It would really be a selling point to use of that facility. You could even stick a restaurant in there. But the point is that part of what we talked about, the Elks being able to outbid us and that kind of thing at the workshop, the fact of the matter is that if you have a facility that has a view, that has something that nobody else has, and new, people are going to go for that. And I think that you could redesign this, and I agree with the gentleman that was just before me, in designing it so that it's an attractive building. And I think that as was mentioned before, something earlier in this council meeting about having it a northwest style. I would also add one more piece, and that is that the final design, if you're able to put some of that out where that L shape of where the bank was and stuff, and using the parking, you may have to work with the bank next door, but quite frankly, that and the DSHS building that's in that location as well, they don't use that parking all the time that heavily. So you might be able to negotiate a lease of some smaller point, knowing that you have a commitment of parking for 90, that you could then incorporate into the design of the second floor of the building and have first floor, Main Street, Pioneer, business, second floor parking, third floor, your training facility or convention center, whatever you want to call it. And also, if you could put out to the public the landscape design that you're going to use to hide it. One of the things about the current facility is that it's not really noticeable, except for the smell. It is not really noticeable. It's because it's surrounded by trees and shrubs and kind of tucked away, and you really don't notice it. You're past it before you realize that that's what it is. If you can show that there's going to be trees and shrubs and the fencing will be attractive where it needs to be fenced, and the front part is a nice building, and again, sort of a northwest design, I think that would take away the prison look that you've heard about today. I think if you look at it right now on the table here, you can concur that it is a 1950s grade school or a prison, which goes without saying.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Anyone else?
I'm J.J. Olson. I live right over here by the park. I'm also agree with the number one speaker.
Excuse
We
me,
got to
excuse me,
raise
is that Mr. Brown? Could you state your full name?
Jerome Olson.
Olson.
I did say J.J. Olson.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Omberg gave a very good presentation on why it should be raised, as far as I'm concerned. It makes more sense, and I don't understand having to rent trailers for construction people. That's part of the contract that they have, as far as I know. But anyway, the last speaker here had a good idea as far as a building for training or whatever, closer to the street, giving it a more northwest look, I think he used the word, instead of this, looks like Alcatraz, except the water doesn't go all around it. So maybe we can negotiate getting some of that land. That last time I was here, we talked about the bank, Wells Fargo, not moving at all. If somebody in the real estate business gave them a real offer, you might be surprised. I don't think they'll listen to the city hall, but they will if somebody comes up with some money. Another thing you could do, my notes, is sell some of that land out there on Sleeper Road. All those trees. I don't care what that tree guy said, $300,000 just to get his bid in there, and then say the lumber price has gone down. Well, the lumber price hasn't gone down in many parts of this country, and it's for sale in lots of the world because they don't have the lumber we have here. So these things are ways to make some money out. Then you could use the gravel underneath the trees once you take the stumps out, so you don't have to use any more gravel for the rest of the city. So I say raise that building, raise it, is that the right word? Get it, cut it down, and make it usable, nice place like he described out of it, and go with a little more parking right there around this side of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Anyone else? Second call. Third call, public meeting is closed. Go to the City Council for questions, comments regarding this agenda bill. Start with Ms. Hyson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I apologize, I wasn't able to attend the workshop today because I was in class, but I'm sure this question has probably been answered. How much will demolition cost? Do we have an estimate on that?
We did get an estimate from Hoffman Construction. It includes demolishing the building, paving the parking lot, and such, and it was $550,000.
That's it?
And
I
that,
expected it to
that
be more.
doesn't take into account if they find hazardous materials or things
Sure.
like that. It's just a base back of the napkin cost at this point.
Okay.
I might add that that's over a 3-year period. It was started at 500 and then if I'm not mistaken, so.
Correct. So if it was the cost today would be $550,000 with, it didn't, I don't have it right in front of me, but I don't believe it included escalation in that cost. It's minor because the cost is, they based it on square footage for demolition. 500 to 550,000 is close enough to the ballpark for what I have right now.
Either way, it's less than our lowest estimate for retrofitting the existing building, correct? Okay. I'm in favor of demolishing the building. I definitely think that we could better utilize that space. I would be in favor, however, of doing that immediately. I don't like the idea of waiting 3 years to do that, but that's just my opinion. I don't know what my peers think. But I do support demolishing it for a number of reasons. I just wish we could do it sooner than later. My humble opinion. Thank you, Danny.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Hyson. Mr. Servant?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I had a lot of questions at our last meeting, and And thank you for providing a lot of information that helped answer most of those. I guess one question that we didn't talk about much at the workshop is, could we demolish, that building's been built in about 5 different phases. When I came to Oak Harbor, it was a furniture store, Ray Zylstra's furniture store. And I think since then it's been added on to 4 different times. Is there a way to demolish part of it and use part of it for the during the construction as we want to do? I mean, could we, I don't want to put you on the spot at this moment, but could we look at those options so that we, use what we need to use, but start getting back some of the property earlier? Could that?
There was thought at one point of where the loan offices were, loan processing portion was, that part is kind of a thumb that could be taken off of the building. The rest of it, I'd have to take a closer look. I don't know what, I'm not sure what we would gain by the parts that we would lop off. Are you looking for room for another portion of the facility?
Well,
or-
I guess that I would like us to look at all options. I'm not really
Okay.
sure either why I'm asking that, but if we could utilize for staging or I'm really saddened about the RV park and closing that, and you know that, we've had that conversation. But I am now convinced that we need to move ahead and demolish the building. I would like to make sure that we check all, and I'm certainly sensitive to what they're talking about as far as new design when that time comes. So I'll be supporting it when the time comes.
Thank you, Mr. Severance. Mr. Amber?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I am going to support the draft resolution of 1514. And I'm not particularly anchored to the immediate tear down of that building. There's a lot of reasons why we would want to wait until construction is finished. It really comes down to dollars. This whole project relates to sewer rates. And I want to do it the most economical way, the benefit for the ratepayer. And that's not political talk. That is meaningful discussion. And I don't know that what we would gain out of trying to remove part of the building, because buildings are put together where you have shear walls, you have the floors, the ceilings, all of this stuff is tied together structurally. When part of that structure is compromised, it may be creating more problems for us than what we'd be gaining out of this. So I'm going to support the resolution as presented, even though it does say take it down in 3 years or after construction.
Thank you, Mr. Amber. Mr. Campbell?
Thank you, sir. I'm going to support this. I think it's a good idea to keep it 3 years, just so we can put workers and construction and all that kind of stuff in there as office spaces. I do have a question, though, and it's probably for the attorney. Do we have any legal complications going to face us because of the coffee shop there we're kicking out when we tear this building down?
Well, Mr. Campbell, I would rather not respond to questions of legal risk in open council. However, I do know that we have talked with the Daily Grind's owner, and that we will be working with the Daily Grind in order to assist in relocation efforts. She does have, at this juncture, a month-to-month lease, not a term lease, so that should put your mind at ease to some extent on that.
It does. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mrs. Munn?
No questions. I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you, Mrs. Munn. Mr. Shabatis?
Thank you. I talked with Mr. Hovey in a conversation, and when we had this conversation last meeting, he said I didn't understand where you stood on this, so I want to be clear. I had higher hopes when we purchased, or we were looking at purchasing the building. I had higher hopes that it could be better utilized, whether as city offices or anything. But as we went through the due diligence, the appraisal, it became fairly clear that it probably wasn't as viable as you might think from the outside. And after listening to Mr. Allenberg's numbers, which were much more polished than mine as far as trying to recoup that, I look at things fairly straightforward, asset liability being a numbers person, and it really is more of a liability on a balance sheet at this point probably than an asset. So I would support taking it down. And I think we made a fairly, when we first had that discussion too, and Mr. Stowell brought it forward, I think I was at your office, if not that day, the next day, asking the questions that Mr. Olson, Mr. Tveit asked about, hey, can we stuff this thing north? And that was my immediate hope once again. After talking to Mr. Stowell, the big building that you see there, the biggest building where sits on top of part of the aeration basin, the MBR, what do we call those, canisters?
Membranes.
Yeah, the MBR membrane cartridges. And then all the mechanical right behind that, that's going to be a 3-story building, correct?
Close to it,
Approximately.
yes.
Close to a 3-story building. So trying to get something behind that that would then take advantage of a view, you're going to be looking at probably not over, that will be the largest building there. So that was one of the concerns that I too was hoping we could somehow get a building. But I don't know as far as utilizing it as a community space, training center, or something with a view, if that's going to work out. One of the things I want to keep in mind, when you look at that thing is built out of matchboxes or whatever they use at the moment. And even the architectural drawings that are available online that the public can view, and thank you for embedding the links in the email to us. It's still fairly rudimentary, but I also agree with what the public has said. Mr. Hovey sent an email that we've got a lot of work to do to make it more aesthetically pleasing, more northwesty, if that's a term. We built a house, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and we spent a lot of time designing it from the outside. And I think it looks nice, but in retrospect, I view my house from the inside, and there's a lot of times now where I look at windows, I'm like, why is that window not centered in the laundry room? Well, it's because I wanted it symmetrical from the outside. And I think we have the opposite challenge here. We're designing it from the outside. So let's make sure we do that right, not pay as much attention to the inside. Obviously, we're not. We have to make sure that the flow works, but let's get this right for the public if that's where it's going. And so I would just remind the public, when you see some of those Lego views that the architects in the early stages have put together, I don't think, well, the public won't tolerate it. We won't, hopefully any of us, tolerate it as a council unless it looks good, landscaping and design aesthetics, awnings, et cetera. The flat roof comments, I don't know to what degree we can totally get away from that, but keep in mind when you're looking at that and you're looking down or you're looking at architectural rendering, to some degree there will be flat roofs. But if you're standing on the street looking at it, to what degree will you really see those big expanses of roof? It's like looking down on Walmart, you only see that coming down Barrington, and you realize what a large expanse some of those roofs are. So just please keep that in mind. I too support waiting, only in that we need a place for construction offices, for staff, for archaeology. You mentioned a lab. I didn't know that was a possibility, but 2 labs. Storing any kind of sensitive equipment that we would procure ahead of time. I think that makes sense. And having participated in a controlled burn, maybe we could save some money. No, I realize that's probably way too big a structure for our team to take on, but we could have one heck of a party down there in the end and save on a bunch of cleanup and hauling away. So I would support, I absolutely support this. So I will pause if there's no further commentary, or I would be happy to make a motion.
You can make the motion.
Can I make a comment before the motion?
You're not making a motion yet.
I'm not. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Allenberg.
I would like to comment on that scale that's presented on the table, the modeling. That is not necessarily the best architectural modeling that I've ever seen, but it does represent the space allocation of that facility. And that's all it's really representing is space allocation. Architectural design really starts from the interior and works outward. The part that we see on the outside is not the only architecture in there. It's the gingerbread. The real stuff is what's in the space. So you're really looking at the bricks and sticks structurally and not necessarily the frosting and gingerbread that goes with it. And I'm with the other council members too. I would not put up with a low security prison feature down there. I just don't want to see it. And I think we can, and we will do better. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Allenberg. Back to Mr. Servetis.
I move to approve Resolution 15-14.
Second.
Raise your hand. Moved by Mr. Servetus, seconded by Mrs. Munns, to approve resolution number 15-14, a resolution of the Oak Harbor Council directing staff to remove the former Whidbey Island Bank building upon completion of the wastewater treatment plant as presented through this resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stowell. Our next agenda is 11A, authorized landed gentry water main oversizing reimbursement for Fairway Point number 3. And again, Mr. Joe Stowell, still on the podium.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. If you remember, just a little bit earlier this year, the final plat for Fairway Point was approved by council. That's the culmination of years of work by landed gentry in that area. They started in 2004, and the final phase, they're building homes in it right now as we speak. When they first started work on the project, we identified a need for the city to have larger water lines through certain portions to tie our water system together. Landed gentry was, and their engineers were able to demonstrate that all they needed for their purposes was 8-inch water main. Our water modeling indicated that we needed at least 10-inch, and then with the new placement of the water storage tank, a certain portion of it was upsized to 16 to roughly align with where Boone Road ties might or may possibly sometime in the future tie in. If not tie in, at least the water line could come down that alignment. So we worked with landed gentry. We've been working with them quite diligently for some time now to come up with a reimbursement for those upsizings and upsizing of that pipe. And what the upsizing really pays for is the difference between installing an 8-inch main and the larger size that we requested. So on February 19th, Landed Gentry and their teams supplied a request for reimbursement to the city in the amount of $83,995.31. As staff, we reviewed that. There were a certain number of the items they had detailed invoices for, and as with anything, there was a certain number of them that were estimated, which we validated and looked at to make sure that they met the current market standard and were reasonable. The other part of the equation that they supplied was an estimate for the 8-inch main, and it was based on quotes that they received from their contractor and from supply houses. We actually, we talked it over, and we have real numbers for 8-inch main from previous Fairway Point project, bill of sale that indicated the actual cost for installing an 8-inch. So as city staff, we used what we knew as, what we had as a known number versus one that was estimated to compare that against. And in doing so, when you compare the cost of installing the 10 and 16-inch main versus the cost of installing 8-inch in Fairway Point 4, we came up with a reimbursement of $58,868.34. And I went through all this in some detail with Landed Gentry on May 6th before we submitted the agenda bill to make sure we're all on the same page. And if you'd like to see the calculations, they're attached in pages 182 through 184 of the packet.
Thank you, Mr. Stowell. Before I go to the council for questions, I'm going to open the floor for public meeting. And Mr. Stowell, I can see the proponent, Mr. Gentry, here tonight.
Yes, Mr. Gentry is in the audience tonight.
Okay, thank you. This time, I'd like to open the floor for public meeting. Anyone who would like to address the council concerning this agenda bill?
Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, my name is Brian Gentry, and I'm with Landed Gentry Homes and Communities. We're a builder, a home builder and community developer, and that's my family company. We've been business for over 35 years, and a good 20+ of those we've been working right here in the city of Oak Harbor. The upsize agreements are something we've done in the past for other phases at Fairway Point. I think this one, for whatever reason, was a little more arduous than what we've done in the past. However, I feel like the meeting that we had on May 6th with Mr. Stoll, Mr. Merriman, and Mr. Powers was really good. It's kind of a good capstone. I think like everything, hindsight's 20/20, and you figure out some spots where maybe next time we'll do a little differently and that sort of thing. So anyway, I'm happy we were able to land on a number here. Certainly, this is an investment we make, as a community developer to we spend money out of our pocket to improve the system for the city's future, and trying to recover it later. It's a commitment. It's an investment on our part too. So I certainly appreciate the city's willingness to look at this and get this process to move on. Anyway, I'm certainly here available as well as Mr. Stoll if you have any questions, and happy to, and I appreciate your willingness to support this item tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Anyone else would like to address the council? Second call? Third call, public meeting is closed. Let me go to the council at this time for question and comments, starting with Mr. Servitis.
I will support this. I'd just like to say thank you to Mr. Gentry and crew and/or staff, whoever had the foresight to initiate this. It just makes sense up front to put in the infrastructure so that we can expand, and we know that there is growth. The city's growth is headed out that way, so I will support this.
Thank you, Mr. Servitis. Mrs. Munns.
Thank you. Mr. Stowell, I'm glad to hear that all the parties were able to work together. And I would hope through the conversations that everybody can come up with some sort of checklist or something so that we all are on the same page, so that you don't have doubts, and any company like Land Gentry who's willing to invest in our city doesn't have doubts, and we'll all come out on the same page. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Munn. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. I have no questions. I'll support this.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Armberg.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to support this. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Armberg. Mr. Servants.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will support this also.
Thank you, Mr. Servants. Ms. Heisen.
I move to authorize payment for oversizing the water mains in Fairway Point in the amount of $58,868.34.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Heisen, seconded by Mr. Servants, to authorize payment for oversizing the water mains in Fairway Point in the amount of $58,868.34. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passed. Thank you. The next item in our agenda bill is 11B, discussion regarding RV park location plan and estimated timeline for completion. I think Dr. Court is...
Right. Thank you. This is an opportunity that the council occasionally brings forward with two motions by a council member. There's a further discussion. So at this point, it's in the council's opportunity to have that discussion.
And this discussion was brought forward by Mr. Servatius. Shall we start with Mr. Servatius?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Well, as the council, we are basically the city's liaisons in the community. And so when we get asked what's going on with the wastewater treatment plant, what's happening with the RV park, when we have no answer, it's kind of difficult and uncomfortable to say, and awkward to say, I don't have a clue. So what I would like is an update if staff is able to give us one. I know the mayor is not here. He's been absent. I understand with the condition. So I guess if we could get some kind of an update, what is the current status? We had talked about a couple of months ago a workshop, and we were presented a diagram. I think it was 400 feet of fence or some number of fencing along the marina backside of Catalina Park there, with the ease and feasibility of extending electrical and water so that if we need to close some juncture, the RV park, which we understood the original timelines, that closure would occur this month. I now know that that's been extended. We talked about relocating the RV park on a temporary basis out there during the construction period. We've heard nothing since, so we can't respond. I don't know if anyone else has got inquiries, but I can't respond. When asked what's happening with the RV park, what's happening with the 4th of July down there, so I would look forward for any feedback from staff and or, I don't know if my peers want to comment on that first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shoupaitis. Any comments from the council concerning that? Shall we go around the red round robin? Mrs. Munns, we'll start.
Is there any way that we truly have a clear record of what money is spent by the RVers? Generally, that's your home. So other than groceries and maybe an occasional buy, it's not like they're coming to spend weekend for money unless there's a festival or something. To balance out what we would save by having a staging area or keeping the park open. I know they've tried to keep the park open at other times during construction of the storm drain that went out. And because of trucks going through there and rocks flying and dirt, they moved away because it endangered their rigs. And there's no way we can stop trucks from not going there, even if we didn't use it as a staging area. So I'm just wondering the value of the $80,000 from RVers that pay to stay, plus we're liable for damage to their rigs, to being in a close proximity. I don't want to get rid of the RV park, but if we have to temporarily close it, I think we should look at all angles of it.
Thank you, Mrs. Munns. Mr. Campbell?
Thank you. As the owner of an RV, Ms. Munns, the city's not liable for damage done to my RV. It's my responsibility. That's why I have insurance. I thought that we had a discussion at one time that we were going to move the park during the construction down to the marina. I thought it was a good idea. I've been down there. There's a little bit of difficulty getting in and out because there's a lot of backing up and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't recommend that we do parallel to the fence. I would recommend that we do a diagonal, and people are not going to diagonal park with their nose to the fence. They're going to back in, which means some traffic jams at times because most of them are like me. I pull a pickup truck behind my RV. I got to stop, I got to take it off, and then I got to back up. The marina, in my estimation, is as good as any if we can provide the water and the electric. Most people are going to be a little bothered that they've got to disconnect and go down to the dumping station, but that's just the fact of life. There was another suggestion made that over on the corner of maybe we could rent some property over on the corner of Swantown and Fort Nugent. There used to be an RV park, not an RV park, a trailer park in there. The construction has not started and they've not taken everything down. The electric boxes are still there, the sewers are still there. They've not done anything. So maybe it would be a good idea just to call the people that own that and ask them if we could put the RV park in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Armbruster?
Thank you. Well, let's start with what we have to do and why. The cost of transporting the spoils off the site, correct me if I'm wrong, I see Joe in there, he can come to the podium if he wants to, but I believe the estimate was like $1.6 million to transport it off the site and return it. The revenue off the RV park, the approximate net revenue is about $80,000, so 3 years is $240,000. To me, it's a no-brainer. I don't want to spend $1.6 million in exchange for $240,000. The concept of going out to the RV or to the marina makes more sense than any other site that I have seen because we already have a hard surface, all-weather surface. We have electrical services in the vicinity. It is going to cost money to put in temp power in there, and probably it will cost money to put in some temp water services also. We have showers that are out there, and those RV people who are towing vehicles will also have additional parking in the marina area. I would hope we wouldn't charge them for parking their towed vehicle. And most RV parks, including ours, include backing up into angled parking. So, you know, I think people who are driving those vehicles know how to back up a vehicle. And when this comes forward to the council again, I hope the proposal is to take the temporary RV park and put it out in the marina. And one thing that is definitely for sure, heavy off-road equipment do not mix with vacation rigs. People either tenting in that area or camping, and you have a gravel road going by, you've got dust control, you have mud control, you have noise. It's not convenient for people who want to visit our park to be right in the middle of construction. And the marina also puts them near our downtown, where I would hope that they would purchase their goods, and they may have to drive to Safeway or Albertsons or whoever is in the area to buy their groceries. I think you guys are used to doing that, aren't you, Jim?
It's a walk. We don't drive.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albert. Mr. Severn?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have said on several occasions that I'm sorry that we're not going to be able to offer RV spots for 30 months unless we figure out something. And I guess I have heard the Marine, in fact, I saw a schematic, I believe, but it's my understanding that staff has probably been told that we're not going there. But the mayor's not here. I don't know that, and I don't know how we get that answer. I understand he's certainly got the medical issues going, and that's something that is very difficult. But I don't know how we are able to communicate with staff about, is the marina still on the table? Or is that off the table? And if it's off the table, is there any other option on the table? I guess I'll ask you, Dr. Court, if you know anything about that.
I don't have any additional information. I know that discussion happened over like a couple month period. I went the wrong way, didn't I? I know that discussion took place, and there was some early talk about how that might be put together. I haven't spoken to the mayor specifically on that, but I'm happy to do that, and we can bring back that information from him. I don't have any additional information from before, so.
Okay. I think then what I'd like to see happen is for you to have that conversation, and then if that's off the table for some reason, I'm hoping that there's going to be some other alternative that we can work on, whether it's Mr. Campbell's idea of communication with that private owner. I'm not sure how that would work or how far that will go, but is there another option? I met with Carl Friend a few months ago now, and I suspect that would be pretty difficult to do anything over there with temporary electrical, and so it's probably not an option. But if we're not going to do something at the marina, I'd like to see us at least consider other options.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Severn. Ms. Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I guess I'm a little perplexed at the theory that the marina option is off the table, because that's our decision to make. So if that idea has been taken off the table, I don't understand how that would have happened. So that would be up to us. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not. I'm reading, and I timed out, The motion instructs staff to prepare an agenda item to discuss the current status of the RV park location plan, estimated timeline for completion to be presented at our council meeting. I guess I'm a little confused as to where the presentation is. Like, what's the estimated timeline? What's the location plan? Where's the presentation? What's it gonna cost? I mean, these were all questions that we asked before Councilmember Servadius made his motion. So I want to hear from staff. Those are my questions. Is it feasible? How much is it gonna cost? What's the timeline? Give us details, because yeah, we haven't heard a peep since it was brought up, and we all liked the idea, so what's going on?
All I can say on that issue is, you know, we'll follow up on that and have that discussion with the mayor. I mean, we all the staff supports to, or support, not is. We answer to the mayor, and if questions have come up that we haven't provided answers to the mayor on making a final decision or moving ahead on something, we'll follow up on it. And I don't have any specifics.
Okay, and again, I apologize if I'm being obtuse, but I'm still perplexed. If the council adds something to the agenda and asks for this information, I guess I don't understand why that information would not be available.
I don't have specific information on that because I just wasn't specifically wasn't around for that discussion. I'm happy to do some homework on that and provide some additional information on that.
Thank you. Mr. Armberg?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Court. I would like to make a motion that the motion is we direct the mayor to direct the staff to prepare a schedule and an estimate and a preliminary layout for a temporary RV park located at the marina. Period.
Mr. Olmberg, that motion is not a legal motion. The council can't direct the staff, or direct the mayor to direct the staff. The mayor directs the daily work of the staff.
Well, then let me back this motion up. Help me out. That we can't direct the mayor to do anything.
No, you cannot.
You can request.
Pardon?
Request that a motion, that an item be put together and brought back at a certain time. So
Well,
That was Joel's original motion.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the point.
I know.
That was the original motion. We didn't get the deliverables out of this. So are we into some kind of a delay game about where it's going to go or it's not going to go? It's really the council's decision on where this is going to go and when. Now, this doesn't seem like it's very consistent with our previous policies where there have been motions made where we ask the mayor to direct staff to present a deliverable at a specific time
Don't we just ask staff?
and a specific date.
Mr. Armberg has a motion, and according to our city attorney, that's not a correct motion. Do you have any suggestion how we can modify that motion?
Aaron does.
Quite frankly,
You can't do that. I'm sorry. Time out. Time out.
Point of order, yeah. Yeah, he can't address the.
No.
No.
State your point.
Excuse me, Ms. Heisen.
This is not legal.
Return. Thank you.
Sorry, I was consulting our resident
May I
parliamentarian.
say something?
And I think my last question, if the council has any suggestion of refining or modifying that motion.
Suggestion to refine or modify that motion, because the substantive issue that you're attempting to get at is not one that you can accomplish. The mayor is the one that directs the daily activities of the staff, and council can't direct the mayor to direct the staff.
You know, I've been on this council going on 8 years, and there have been a lot of motions made asking the mayor, regardless of whether it's Mayor Slowick or Mayor Dudley, to have staff do specific things and bring it to the council, including when we declared an emergency about the budget issues. So what is different now that today that is different from what we've been doing in the past?
The information well, the mayor directs the staff to bring things forward or to, or not, and then the council reviews the applications, makes modifications, makes a motion to approve something. The information that we get from the council, based on discussions at this meeting, is if it's an action that requires the mayor to suggest or to make a to direct the staff to prepare work is based solely on action by the mayor.
Okay. You've made that clear, Dr. Court. So let me just go back to my motion then so we can get off this topic and move along. The council has already approved a permitting process and a site plan about where the wastewater treatment is going to go, where the staging is going to be for construction, and where the disposals are going to be stored currently at the existing RV park. That's correct. That's in our permit. That's been approved by the council.
You approved a resolution that designates where the laydown will be, if that's okay.
That's right. We've already approved that, exactly, right? Okay. So then, if the mayor is willing to do this, I'm willing just to go forward and we just close the RV park, and if he wants to tell the community that we're going to forego potentially $240,000 by not going out to the marina, then he can tell that to the community. But what I'm asking for is, I would like to have detailed information about what it will cost and how the numbers match up. And I don't have to put that in a motion. You can tell that to the mayor. It's going to be his $240,000 that are going to go down the road someplace else if we don't have an RV park. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albert. Mr. Campbell?
I just, when we were earlier talking about moving it to the marina, I want staff to recognize that you got to have 50 amps of electrical power when you hook this up. If you don't have 50 amps, you get people like me with 15-year-old RVs, and they'll work. Guys with these 40-footers with the televisions and all that stuff in it, they're running around shutting things off because there's not enough electricity for them. That's at this park down here. So at the marina, you need 50 amps.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Shibri, you're not done yet?
No, I'm not. Got one more.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just for information, if you come off of Highway I-5 and turn on exit 230 on Highway 20, the first time you're going to see an RV park is when you turn left on Highway 20 at Sharps Corner, and about a quarter mile up the road is an RV park on the right. That's 17 miles from the city of Oak Harbor. When you get down to Deception Pass and you go across Deception Pass Bridge to the first stoplight, on the left back in the woods is an RV park. You don't know it's there because it's pretty well hidden. There's also an RV park on that corner there, and I think it's called North Whidbey RV Park. The last time I was there was yesterday. I drove by it. It doesn't look to me, and it looks familiar to me because it always looks this way. There's not a spot available there. If we do something by putting the RV park down at the marina, which is the most logical place, we'll have people coming to visit us unless we don't provide the right kind of services for them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Shebraitis.
Thank you. Let's try this again. We passed a resolution detailing a closure of the RV park in its current state and the use of that to store dirt. We then published a flyer and an article in the Whidbey News-Times that said it was closing, and here are the dates it's closing. What is the current status, the current timeline for closure of the RV park that's being communicated to the public? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I think that Public Works can better answer that
All right.
particular question.
Bet you guys thought you'd see me sooner than this.
We're hoping.
We've been working on an updated schedule for the closure of the RV park and staging. Been working with Enviro Issues to put together a graphic and handouts so we can do it proper. If we follow the schedule that we're currently under, we would be looking for closure of the RV parks sometime in September. And then that would be the annexed or the overflow area. And then the other portion, we're looking not until early 2016. So the dates have been pushed back. We've been working with Hoffman to confine the area that they're imposing. Keep in mind that we will still have construction activity going on. So it's, they'll have to, any tenants will have to understand that there is active construction in the area.
So, thank you. Did we as a city communicate to it through any publications, RV magazines, that our RV park was closing? Do we know, did we communicate that outside of a flyer that I think I posted on my council page, but have we communicated that? And do we need to kind of retract that statement so that we're not losing customers if we're shifting these timelines?
Now I see Kathy coming.
Okay.
We did not publish anything in any publications. We had some signage, some information at the RV park and on our website.
Okay. And understand, I don't think, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm not faulting staff here. I'm very concerned about the lack of communication, lack of direction that seems to be coming from the administration with regards to a lot of these processes. So coming back, Mr. Allenberg, you made a motion, didn't receive a second. So normally that should stop that discussion, but you're welcome to continue to make another motion. I remain concerned that we're at every part of this process that delays, unless there's a valid reason to have it being delayed, as we spoke about earlier, is $150,000 a month. That's real money. And if we have a viable alternative to give RVers I think probably just as good of a location, they'd still have to unhook and drive 50 yards to dump. Right? They can't dump directly from their RVs, can they? They still unhook and drive over to the dump station, right?
Yeah.
We do have some full hookup sites at our current RV park.
Okay,
yes.
so there's that inconvenience, but Catalina Park is a beautiful location. It gets hopefully some traffic going. It'd have to come Bayshore to go to the grocery stores and then back down Pioneer. It would give some more exposure to downtown that it may not be receiving. At any rate, like Mr. Allenberg pointed out, that is money that if we're not communicating a very clear plan of action, that's just going to trickle away because most people will assume there's not RV parking available in Oak Harbor. And I won't ask staff to answer the question if they've been given a directive to not do anything with regards to the RV park, but as Mr. Severin stated, I think that's what I'm sensing. And so I will open it up to my peers. I don't know if we can formulate a motion here to move to ask staff, to ask the mayor to talk to us. And I hate to make light of that and be cavalier, but that's where we're at. So I will end at that point. Thank you, Mr. Pagel.
Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. Ms. Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I guess this would be a question for Ms. Esparza. If the Mayor Pro Tem serves in the mayor's absence, is that limited to meetings? I mean, if he's going to be gone for a number of weeks and staff is not receiving direction in their day-to-day work, and I'm volunteering you here, could the Mayor Pro Tem then step in and assume that role until the mayor returns? As deputy mayor?
The Mayor Pro Tem's role is limited to routine actions unless the mayor is truly unavailable, like incapacitated. If the mayor is still available by phone or by email and able to make the major decisions, then the Mayor Pro Tem's role is limited to just routine actions such as running meetings and signing documents and the like.
Okay. Well, that answers several questions. I guess I was expecting information in a presentation. So personally, I don't even understand why we're having this discussion because this is not productive. I'm annoyed. I apologize. I mean, but yeah, this isn't a productive discussion as far as I'm concerned. So why staff isn't receiving direction if the mayor is available by phone is a mystery to me, but maybe it's something we can get to the bottom of. We need to our lives, and so
Thank you, Ms. Heisen. Mrs. Munns?
Ms. Munns wrote, Dr. Court, would you let the mayor know that we request information concerning the RV park?
I'm happy to relay that information, but you have direct access to the mayor, and if you want to put together some sort of an action that you would pass along to the mayor, that would probably be a more effective route. But I'm happy to directly connect that information. But as the council, you have direct access to the mayor.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ms. Dombert.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. What I'm hearing is it sounds like pretty much the city is on hold with respect to the wastewater treatment plant and the related facilities that are required to go forward with this process. So are you saying the city is going to be on hold and it's going to be at the city's expense, at the taxpayers' expense, the ratepayers' expense, that we wait for him to come alive and make some decisions?
If council has specific questions for the mayor, you should oppose those or provide that information directly to the mayor. We're the staff. We work for the mayor. If the information that comes from the council is information that is provided to the mayor, then the mayor will talk to us about, okay, where do we go from here? That's our staff role is pretty clear. There's a distinction between what the council does and in some instances but the council's role and discussion with the mayor is a direct connection that is part of how we operate as a city.
Mr. Severin?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So what I've heard is that our park is going to be open, RV park is going to be open until September, and then the overflow portion is going to be used for the dirt And then the other part of the park is going to still be open until 2016. I think that's what Mr. Stoll just said. So I suggest we move along here, and we can talk about the RV park in another month or two.
Ms. Heisen?
I don't disagree with Mr. Severns. And I understand that we can communicate with the mayor. I mean, we all have his phone number, we all have his email, but we didn't know that we weren't receiving any information until right now. And this motion was made weeks ago. So had we known that no information would be coming forward, then I certainly would have been asking him those questions. I mean, I don't have any problem doing that. It also seems redundant because a motion was made, so I'm not sure how much clearer we can be in requesting that information, if that makes sense, because that's already been done. I also think that I think that there needs to be some kind of a plan B. I mean, I had no idea that there was no executive administration here for weeks. So maybe in the future, some kind of a backup plan for when that's going to happen. Just throwing that out there. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to pick up the phone tomorrow, obviously, but other than that, I don't really know what our options are tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Heisen. Excuse me. Can I get it? Thank you. Based on the discussion of the City Council, there's a great continued interest by the council to look for alternative locations for the RV park. And this issue just didn't come up this evening. It came up from the very start of the discussion on the construction of wastewater treatment plant about closing the RV park and using it to store the equipment and store other things from the wastewater plant. And then there was a question from the council also about the loss of revenues. And the discussion about the use of the marina came about, and I recall that came from the staff, that the staff can provide electricity, power, and water, and there's shower rooms, 2 shower rooms right in the marina. So I think the council is expecting this evening to receive timeline as the motion of Mr. Servetus has stated. Could that be timeline for coinciding the closing of the existing RV park to the opening of the alternative location, which could be the marina? And hopefully the staff can provide those questions back to the council for this alternative location in the marina, and when will be the timeline for completion of that. That's my 2 cents. Mr. Albrecht.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to try this motion a different way. And this will not be directing staff to do anything. And the motion is, in an effort to reduce the loss of revenue from the RV park and financial impacts, negative financial impacts on the cost of the wastewater treatment plant, the council has a very strong preference for the mayor and staff to prepare a schedule and a timeline for a temporary RV park located at the marina.
Second.
So you were actually making a motion and not just stating a preference?
I'm making the motion that, just like I said, I'm not telling him to do anything or the staff to do anything. I'm hoping that the council communicates their preference, and hopefully it will be unanimous that we get some action going on this thing. Or he can accept the responsibility for the loss of revenues at the RV park, or even a temporary RV park. And he can address the community on that matter.
At this time, there's a motion on the floor made by Mr. Armberg, seconded by Mr. Campbell. The motion, as Mr. Armberg has read. Can I read
Yeah,
it again?
want me to repeat that again?
Yes, please.
In an effort to reduce the loss of revenue from the RV park and negative cost impacts to the wastewater treatment, the council has a very strong preference for the mayor and staff to prepare a schedule and a cost estimate for the temporary relocation of the RV park at the marina.
Before I go to the council for discussion, motion on the floor, let me ask the legal counsel if that's a good motion.
What I'm hearing is that you're making a motion to express a preference. Convey a preference.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I can't exactly answer that.
It's a good motion. And it's been seconded. So now we have to take action on it. I want the public to know that this council is really making every effort to minimize the cost on this wastewater treatment plant and to reduce the negative impacts, and this would be a negative impact on the wastewater treatment plant. And the alternative, and I don't know what other alternative location that there is that meets the requirements, but the alternative for handling the spoils is, to me, is no contest. It's $240,000 of revenue, or $1.6 million cost. You know, to me, that's a no-brainer.
There's a motion on the floor and seconded, and per council rules, if there's a motion on the floor and seconded, this item will be brought forward on the next regular council meeting or whenever the staff prefers a certain date.
I didn't hear it as a motion to place something on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, ma'am?
No, this
You're
was.
directing the staff.
I wasn't directing the staff to put anything on the agenda. What I'm doing is basically what you said, told us to communicate with the mayor about this. Well, this is one of the ways we can communicate. It isn't going to do any good to talk to him individually on the telephone. He may not even answer the telephone. So we have a motion out here that says, you know what, this is what we really want to do. We want to reduce the cost of this wastewater treatment plant. Take it from there.
Therefore, the motion on the floor will open up for discussion from the council. Mr. Campbell, I thought you were raising your hand.
I'm just terribly confused. The purpose of this body is to control policy and dollars. We're asking for a dollar question to be answered for us. We have never, as far as I'm concerned, have never gone straight to the mayor and said, hey, dude, can you put this on the agenda for us? It's always been, I'd like to make a motion that on the next meeting agenda, we have a subject to discuss the RV park. But you guys are telling us that we have absolutely no way to get any information, because every time we've tried to come through with something, we get the blank look and the it ain't gonna happen kind of thing. We've never had to go call the mayor at home and ask him, do something. That just shoots down the purpose of this kind of body.
I think
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. At this time, before I go to you with Dr. Court, the clock shows 9 o'clock.
Oh, yes.
And we need to do an extension. Mr. Cervantes?
Yeah, I'm not sure, we're not going to let our legal parliamentarian take this one on. Since we have a motion, I need to supersede a main motion with a motion, and I move to extend, or I move to suspend our rules and extend our meeting time to 10 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Cervantes, seconded by Mr. Umberg to suspend the rules and extend the meeting until 10 o'clock. Further discussion? Those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Motion passed. We have meeting until 10 o'clock. Mr. Servetis.
I'm sorry, did someone have the floor before me?
Yeah.
Mr. Campbell?
I didn't expect an answer, but, I do expect an answer. Based on what you've just told us, how are we supposed to get information about dollars and policy?
Well, when the mayor and the staff put the agenda together for meetings, we have put together the material, we put together our recommendations, we get that information out to the community. The council always has the authority at a public session to add to the meeting. And if there are specific items that the council wants to have considered at a meeting, that can happen. Just it can happen at the beginning of the meeting to say, I would like to add this item to the agenda. And that's the typical method for adding something, and then it becomes part of the discussion at a regular council meeting.
At that council meeting or another council meeting?
It can happen at that meeting.
Okay. But can it happen at a later meeting?
Yeah,
Can I ask you today to put something on the July meeting?
You could, yes.
I just did that.
Yeah.
I just did that.
I'm sorry.
I make a motion.
Okay. Oh.
Point of order.
Yeah,
We
I
have a
know.
motion on the floor.
We have a motion on the floor.
Okay.
And I think that's what he's doing.
He wasn't moving to put anything on the agenda.
I am.
Go to Ms. Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just am seeking clarification on the motion. Allmerg and his famous 400-word motions. It was in the form of a statement, and so I'm wondering if the intent was to move to convey our preference. And I understand the value in having the council unanimously vote and say this is our statement, as opposed to make 9 phone calls. So I get that. Just clarifying that the intent of the motion was to convey a preference or a message. Is that correct?
That is the intent, and
Okay.
I thought that's the way the motion read. Sort of.
Mr. Servetis.
I don't know if you wrote that all down, Mr. Allenberg, but if you would please, or if the clerk can reread the motion since we're preparing to vote. One of the things that caught my eye was somewhere in there was the recommendation to have staff prepare, or the mayor to prepare some form of report.
Mayor and staff to prepare.
Mayor and staff to prepare. I would consider, and I'm happy to amend that motion to include a very specific timeline. Once again, at $150,000 a month, that's $5,000 a day on average, and every little part has a trickle-down effect on this project. And so unless there's a incredibly valid reason to postpone this decision, I would like to accelerate it so that the public, the community knows what the plans are. RVers have confidence that they'll have a place to stay. So if you would please, either Mr. Allenberg or Anna, if you were able to capture that, I don't know if you could type fast enough, to reread that, and then I'm going to consider amending it with a specific time.
The motion reads, in an effort to reduce the loss of revenue at the RV park and financial negative impacts on the costs of the wastewater treatment plant, the council has a strong preference for the mayor and staff to prepare a schedule and cost estimate for the temporary relocation at the RV park at the marina. Motion was seconded by Councilmember Campbell.
Mr. Stowell. You Jeopardy music. During your report, you said that you were currently working, you named a firm on some proposals or some items. Can you give us if I was to name or amend this motion for that report to be deliverable no later than our June, why July? I don't want to wait. We have a June 5th and a June 19th meeting. Sorry, wrong month, scrolling. A June 2nd or a June 16th meeting. Is it feasible for that to be deliverable by the June 16th meeting with the firm you're working with?
I think we're mixing things a little bit. The firm that I was referring to is Enviro Issues. They're subcontracted through Corollo.
Okay.
And they're a PR firm to help us with public outreach through construction of the outfall project specifically.
Okay, thank you. My misunderstanding. Then I would move to amend Mr. Almberg's motion to include that report to be deliverable no later than our June 2nd meeting.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, moved by Mr. Servatius, seconded by Mr. Umberg. Could you state your amendment again?
Yes, just move to have that report that Mr. Almberg is amend his motion, move to amend the motion to have that deliverable no later than June 2nd. And if we can, I don't know if, are you going to restate that, Mr. Pagao, or are we? I was just going to make a follow-up comment.
That'll be good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
If the mayor is not available at that time, can we make sure that we have either a written statement or encourage a written statement or a speakerphone available in council chambers to facilitate that discussion? Thank you. That was just discussion.
Any discussion on the amendment to the motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the amendment to the motion to make the report deliverable no later than 2nd of June 20. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. It passed. Now for the original motion of Mr. Umberg. As read by Ms. Umberg and read by Ms. Thompson. Any question on the motion? We put it on the vote. Those in favor of the original motion, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. Motion passed. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the selection of 3 voting delegates to the AWC business meeting on June 25, 2015 at the Wenatchee Convention Center. Any volunteer to become delegates to the convention, AWC convention? Mr. Servatius?
I'm not able to attend, but could you please identify who is attending?
I will not be attending also. So 2 of us will not be attending.
I'll be attending.
So 4 of you,
You can't.
3 will volunteer to become
There's only.
voting delegates.
Beth, yeah, Beth can't go because she's got all those other meetings she has to go to.
Well, that looks like you, Bob, and me.
The 3 of us, yeah.
So it'll be the 3 of you. The voting delegates will be Mr. Servant, Mr. Almberg, and Mr. Campbell. Mrs. Mons is in the board of directors of the AWC. Mr. Servatius?
Mrs. Sparza, do we need anything more formal? Is that sufficient? Do you need a motion?
I think we
I would prefer a
typically
motion.
have a motion, so.
I move to nominate Ms. Munns can't. Mr. Campbell, Mr. Almberg, and Mr. Severance as our voting delegates at the AWC convention.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Servatius, seconded by Mr. Campbell. Nominating the voting delegates for the AWC business meeting on June 25, 2015, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Severance, and Mr. Umberg. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion passed. Any further business before the council?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Campbell, seconded by Mr. Amberg to adjourn the meeting. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion passed. We're adjourned. Thank you.